Hey everyone, I hope you all are safe and doing good. So, from this video onwards, we are going to start our actual Java programming language. This video is all about introduction to Java. What we are going to cover in this video, in this lecture, basically history of Java, what is the story behind creation of Java. Then we'll see some features of Java. Because of those features, Java is so much popular nowadays, right? It's been so much old. The first version was released in 1996, but still it's one of the top language. What are the features Java has? Then Java editions, what is Java ME, Java SE, Java EE. Then we'll see some these terms like JDK, what is JDK, what is JRE, JVM, what is bytecode, how Java works, these things. And then we will install our JDK, the latest LTS version 21. And then we will write down our first simple program just to print hello world. That's it. Now, history of Java. It starts from 1991. Sun Microsystem was a well established American company that sold computer software, and computer components, these things. Then they wanted to check. They decided to assemble a team, the team as the green team. And they decided like the main vision was, or the main purpose to assemble that team was to brainstorm some ideas like what's the next wave in computing, what would be in trend, what's next. They want to do something new. So the team came up with the idea of a network of heterogeneous devices communicating with each other. Heterogeneous consumer devices like home appliance like TV, VCR, set-top box, network of these devices basically. And the name of that project was given as the Green Project. So one of the member was James Gosling, right? Now their vision was like they want to design a small handheld wireless device through which these devices can communicate with each other, and the software that the green project or the green team develops, that would be installed on all these heterogeneous devices, right? So it's kind of network of heterogeneous devices, right? Like this also, I mean, today's world also, www, network of heterogeneous devices, right? I'll tell you this thing also. Now the main idea was this at starting. So they start working on this project and they start working using C++. But while developing this project, there were some challenges, some goals were there. The software they want to develop, that should consume less memory. Because why less memory? Because these consumer devices are entertainment devices are small devices. They are having less memory. So that software should consume less memory. Then second was first consume less memory. Then second was that software should be like it's like platform independent, because these devices are having their own hardware. So if they build that software that should run on all the hardware. So that should be platform independent. Platform independent. Don't worry, everything is written in my notes. It's not there in PPT, everything, but it's not there in my notes, and I'll send you these notes. You just listen. Then third is main was security, because in a network of these devices they will communicate with each other, so there would be a security issue if any other component they are communicating and they are downloading something, some program or some component or some application, then it shouldn't harm the target device. So the security was also one of the goal. Keep in mind while designing that software or while working on this project, right? Fourth was basically multi-threading. Multi-threading means more than one task. Like, I'll not tell you exactly what is multi-threading. This thing we'll discuss in later slides. More than one thing we can do it at one time, right? That's more kind of like multitasking also, multiprocessing also, but these are different things. Like while downloading or while receiving any other software programs from other component in that network, so that target device can run its own program as well. So means two tasks are running at same time. So this kind of thing they want to achieve to make Java or this thing faster, multi-threading. So these were mainly four goals. So they started working on C++ at first, but because of some security reasons and some problems, C++ was not working. Then the team decided that green team decided to develop a completely new technology or a new language along with this project. So James Gosling, one of the team member, developed a new language, completely new language, which was known as at first oak. Why so? Because oak was a tree outside of his office when he was working on this project. Then when he used to sit there, then from the window he can see that tree. So that's why they gave it a name oak, and oak is also a national tree of many countries. So first name was given oak, that was not Java. And the green project for and in 1992, basically in 1992 basically they come up with a device. It's kind of a PDA device that is known as star 7. It's in my notes, don't worry. If you want to check out what is a star 7, it was basically a smart device having a GUI, having touch screen. Right, nowadays we are having all the phones and everything touch screen, but way back in 1992 they were having this smart device, touch screen device. If you want to check out, you can go to Google and search for that star 7 James Gosling. So you will see the video. You can check out how this device is working. So they come up with this device, right? But the thing is, this basically they wanted to focus cable TV industry. They wanted to do this all these kind of things for cable TV industry, like for TVs, set-top box, VCR, all these things. But the cable TV industry find this kind of thing, this project or this thing, far advanced for them to use. So they rejected this thing. Now what? Now at the same time, during 1991 to 1994, in mid 90s, internet was also growing, and the concept of web or internet was almost similar to this concept, because on this internet also we have like network of heterogeneous things, heterogeneous computers, right? These are connected through web, through internet. So like maybe we have so this client server architecture, we have this these are some clients and servers. So this was basically happening like some clients have their client machines are there. This client machine is suppose running Windows, this is Mac OS, this is Linux, and there are some servers. This servers is running on Linux, this is on Windows. So the client which is running on Linux can interact with the server running on Linux as well as on Windows. So it's kind of, these are heterogeneous devices having different their hardware and operating system and communicating with each other. So this is kind of platform independency. So this feature they can relate, they are able to relate with their this language, Oaks language, platform independency feature. So now in 1994, basically their focus shifted from that, obviously that TV devices because of the rejection, to web applications. Now they wanted to build softwares that can run on different devices connected through web, different computers connected through web. So their focus shifted from this to web applications. Now in 1995, then Oak renamed to Java because of some trademark issues. So why Java? Because of Java Coffee. When they're working on this project, like on this language, at that time they were like fond of the coffee, Java Coffee. Basically Java is an island in Indonesia. The coffee of that island is was very famous at that time, and they used to enjoy that coffee, the team members. So they decided to rename this to Java after this Java Coffee. And during 1995 only, Time magazine called Java one of the best 10 10 best products of 1995, right? Then in 1995 only, one more thing came. Internet was booming. So before Java, the websites or the web pages were static. They were more of static. They were not dynamic and interactive, using HTML only. So they decided at Sun Microsystem, they decided to make them dynamic by by embedding HTML with Java applets. Don't worry, these are in my notes. Is equal to It's kind of dynamic web pages. So they developed their own web browser, that is Hot Java at that time, and they showcase this thing. This just this browser was able to run these Java applets to make web pages dynamic, and they showcase this thing at 95 at the Sun World Conference, right? Although this browser was not popular, it's now not never become so much popular, but they use this browser to showcase their this concept, right? Now, how this works: HTML page will embed some HTML tags related to Java applets. Java applets basically reside on remote server. Whenever the browser render this HTML page and encounter these HTML tags related to applets, then those applets on servers would be loaded on that machine and that would be executed. And that browser should have Java installed to run these applets. That was the condition, right? And then to make basically the idea was to make those web pages more dynamic and interactive. Okay, fine. But now the applets are deprecated. They are not in modern version of Java. There is no applet feature because of some issues like security issue, because they are in remote server. So if you download anything from a remote server to your PC or machine, that there would be a security concern, right? So that's why. And nowadays HTML5, CSS, JavaScripts are being used for to make interactive websites. So applets are, because of their declined use also, they deprecated this feature. But at first applets was there, right? Okay, now at the same conference, now Netscape Navigator web browser decide that they want to go with this feature. They wanted to embed this feature, Java applet feature, in their browser. And then later Internet Explorer also adopt this Java applet feature, right? And then obviously as internet explode, so the adoption of Java also. And soon, and after 1996, their first version came into picture, that is 1.0 was released. And after just release, soon like Java became a go-to language to create web application, standalone desktop application, enterprise applications, enterprise softwares, and even later mobile applications as well. So Java is like everywhere now. It's not for a specific purpose. See, the first purpose was just to make some software or just to make a technology for network of those small home entertainment devices. That's it. But now Java is like, see, from that concept, now Java is where you can see. So this is a small interesting story behind creation of Java and all this. I hope you got this. So you don't no need to go in that much deep. That's just because I want to get you familiar with the history. I found it interesting. That's why I told you everything. And this is written in my notes. And now there are so many versions. Versions are not written there, all the versions. But if you want to check, you can go to you can go to Wikipedia and there I'll show you all the versions of Java. See, first version was in 1996 and that was JDK 1.0 with some AWT and applet. Main was applet, their feature in 1996. Then 1997 JDK 1.1. Like this, there are so many features. Then they called it J2SE, right? And after J2SE, like 1.4, they call it 5.0, but internally it was 1.5 only. Then they call it Java SE 6. J2SE was previously it was called J2SE, but now we call it simply Java SE or the version number 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So these are the versions. If you want to check out, you can check out the details and all. And these versions get support from Oracle. See, Oracle is owner of Java. At first, Sun Microsystem, at that company, Java was created. And who is creator of Java? James Gosling. So James Gosling is known as father of Java. But now Oracle acquired Sun Microsystem in 2020, and now Oracle is owner of Java, right? Okay. The latest is Java 2020, Java 23, Java 23 that was released in recent September 24 only, right? But there are some LTS versions, that is long term support version. So Java 21 is one of them. See, LTS. Long term support means, see, it will get support from till September 28 from Oracle. There are so many vendors or provider for this JDK. What is JDK? I'll tell you, right? And like Microsoft Build, OpenJDK, Red Hat, Eclipse, Amazon Corretto, and like this. There are so many vendors, so they provide support. These long-term version, get extended support from Oracle as well as from other vendors, almost for 8 years. commercial version gets support almost for 8 years for these versions. So that's why companies rely, or the developers for serious projects rely on LTS version, because of their extended support for security patches, bug fixes and all, right? So this is all about versions, and 21 will be using, right? Now, so you don't need to remember all the versions and all. You just remember like these are LTS version, what is latest version, this thing only. Okay. Now, see, after, I guess, after this Java 8, after 7, Java 8 came into 14, and this was in 11, almost 4 to 5 years after this. But after that, see, in September 17, one version, and then March 18, then September 18. Every year they release two versions. So every 6 months you get a new version of Java. But before that, it was not the thing. A version were released after 2 to 3 years or maybe 4 years, because they wanted to update, some big features. They wanted to add some extraordinary features in Java, and then they release. But now they just add some small features and release in every 6 months. Every 6 months. Okay. Now, what are some features of Java? The very first, the basic, because of this, Java became so much popular, is their platform independence. And this thing we have seen many times. What is platform independence? Java applications or the softwares, they are not specific to any particular platform, that will run on this particular operating system and will not run on this particular operating system. You just develop your software or application at one platform or at one system, and you can deploy it on many systems independent of the operating system they are using, without even recompilation, right? And why so? Why platform independence? See, let me just show you this thing, how basically program runs. So we write our source code in any programming language, high level language, then that would be converted into machine code with the help of a compiler, and then you will get the output after that. So this machine code is specific to that particular machine. Either compiler will convert this, or interpreter, or this thing, right? Now, the main funda is this, is our machine or the computer do not understand the source code written in high level language, right? So this machine code is specific to that particular machine. Suppose I'm running or program any C++ program or C program on my machine, having Windows operating system or this architecture like x86 or any architecture, and that every machine, every platform is having its own instruction set. According to that, the instruction would be executed. So according to that, the machine code would be generated. So this machine code is specific to my machine. So if you take this machine code directly, that file you get, like maybe .out file or whatever file you get, and to take to another machine, suppose from one machine is having OS, Windows, and another machine is having Linux. If you take the machine code from Windows and go to Linux, then it will not run. You have to recompile it. After recompilation, the machine code would be generated again, that is specific to that machine, that operating system, that architecture. Then it would be run. This is what platform dependency. Platform independency is what? It doesn't matter. Why Java is platform independent? Let me just show you. We have a Java code, right? You can see how Java works. This is under that thing. We have a Java code, right? That code would be directly not converted into machine code. That is converted into an intermediary code, and it's known as bytecode. This bytecode is an intermediate code. It is not specific to that particular machine. This bytecode is platform independent. It is having some symbols also, some English words also. I'll show you what bytecode is when we run the program. Don't worry. We'll open that .class file. A .class file. Extension of bytecode is .class. Extension of this Java code is .java. Right? Object file you create in another language, that is a .obj. Right? Okay. Now this bytecode would be run on any device which is having that would be converted, that would be interpreted and converted into particular machine code, and then you get output. So this is intermediate between these two. So this bytecode can run on any machine. Different type of machines having different type of operating system, a computer or a phone or anything having different hardware and different that operating system. But the one condition is what? All these machines or all these things should have their JVM, Java Virtual Machine, JVM, Java Virtual Machine, JVM, Java Virtual Machine. This JVM will convert now this bytecode into machine code. This JVM will basically interpret. This would be compiled and this code would be interpreted. Interpreted means line by line code would be converted into machine code and run at the same time. Then second line, third line, then fourth line, like this. Compilation means the complete code at one time only converted into machine code. That is compilation basically. And interpreter does a different thing. That compile line by line. One line at one time to machine code and run like this. So this JVM is playing an important role of this platform independency of Java. I'll tell you what JVM and we'll see the architecture also in later in the later slides. So this is how Java works and this is why Java is basically platform independent because of JVM and because of this bytecode, intermediary code. Right. Okay. Now let me just show you that thing. So this there's a principle in Java that is under this there is a principle in Java that is Bora. Write once, run anywhere. This is the main feature. Write once, run anywhere. Means you have to write just once and you can run that code anywhere on any machine with a Java virtual machine. That machine on which you are running that should have that must have a JVM. Otherwise that bytecode would not be run. So JVM is important. JVM is platform dependent, but Java is you can say Java is platform independent. That particular machine is platform dependent because JVM converts that bytecode into the machine code, right? So that machine code is obviously related or dependent on that architecture of that machine. So that JVM is also specific to your platform, whatever operating system or platform or the architecture you are using. In phone also we have JVM. You don't have to install separately JVM. It's by default there, right? I'll show you when we are going to install. Right. So JVM, just note down this one. JVM is platform dependent. It's not platform independent. For every platform, for your phones, your machines, for your different laptops and computer, that JVM is dependent to platform. And bytecode or Java, you can say that is platform independent. Right. Bytecode is platform independent, you can say. So this is what platform independence. Now, simplicity and ease of use. Next feature. It is familiar with the syntax is familiar with C and C++. It's not that much tough, easy to use, and there are so many features which are making those languages C and C++ complex that have been removed in Java. That is like pointer, multiple inheritance. So these features are not there in Java. That's why we can say it's simple. And because of this object-oriented concept we have, or you can say Java is an object-oriented programming language. It means what? We are having everything would be done with the help of objects, right? I'll tell you this object oriented concept. There is a separate section in our course. In more detail, we'll discuss this thing. But this object orientedness in the programming language helps to model real world scenarios, real world problems in a more natural way. In programming, in a more natural way. Because in real world also everything is object. Like me is an object, fridge, camera, TV, laptop. These things are objects. So in programming also we can relate these things, we can model these things as an object because we have a feature of class object. In real life we have feature of like inheritance. We inherit properties of our ancestor and same property in same way we can model into that language using inheritance feature of OOP. Main four pillars of OOP: inheritance, like abstraction, inheritance, encapsulation, and polymorphism. Right? Abstraction feature like hiding the complicated details or which are not important to you, that would be hidden. Like a switch example, behind the switch, if I switch on the switch, then AC would be on. I don't know what is happening behind the scene, how the wires and all. So all the complex details are hidden from me because I don't need to know that. I just need to know just on this switch and AC would be on. That's it. So same concept, what is in real life, we can implement in our programming language also using abstraction feature of Java, the OOP concept. Right? So that's why we say that generally when we work on projects, then you will get it better. Why I'm saying this object orientedness of particular language help model real world scenarios, real world problems into programming language in a more natural way. So this is more of, it's not, we cannot say that it's completely or truly object oriented, but it is heavily object oriented programming language. It is having a rich standard library. Java APIs means already many code is written. Already many developers have written their code, and that code is available in libraries, and you can use that code and simply build something new. You don't have to write down that thing that is already written from scratch. That is beauty of that standard library. Like in library, in school or college, we have library, there are so many books. So you can just use those books, or from those already there are so many research paper published. You can use those research paper, you can refer that, and you can publish your own research paper. You can write down your own book like this. So there are so many classes, there are so many in the library already written code. You can just use that code, build your own application, build your own software and all. This would help you to develop like your own software and applications because of the rich standard library. Because Java is so much old, almost 30 years. 96 first edition was come, so almost like 28 or 29 years old. Then Java security feature. Java is secure. At first, I told you what was the goal when they were developing that new project or the new language, security. Because it is platform independent, it works in networked environment, devices are connected. So when you like upload or when you download any application or any software from another device, so security is obviously the aim is it shouldn't harm to your own system, right? So there is inbuilt security manager in Java, and this is part of JVM actually. We'll see the JVM architecture also, right? So the security manager control the access to system resources, protecting against the malicious code. One more thing is there in Java, that is bytecode verification. This is also actually in JVM. This is part of JVM. So bytecode verification means when you compile any software, I have just created my own software. I have compiled that and the bytecode had been generated. So if I ship to that my student or my clients and they are having their on the machine their own JVM, so that bytecode would be verified first. It's correct or not. It's adhering the security rules of Java or not. Then only after that only it would be loaded and converted, like interpreted by JVM and all. So bytecode verification is also there. Now, inbuilt cryptography APIs are there, built-in support for encryption, digital signatures, and secure communication. These are already APIs or libraries we can use when we'll be working on projects. So that's why we can say that Java is a secure language. And how basically they achieve the security? See, we know that Java application or the Java software can be downloaded from any resource, right? The bytecode of that application. So the thing is, the bytecode run on JVM, Java Virtual Machine, and this is not an actual machine. Actually, it is a virtual machine, as the name suggests, virtual machine. Like on my system, I have JVM also. So in my I have operating system, file system, many resources, memory, and all. So this JVM, this bytecode would be run in this JVM only. So this JVM will do what? Will control the access that bytecode or this application. There is some application or the software I'm downloading, the bytecode of that application or software. This will restrict this application to access my resources, my operating system or memory and all. Whatever needs to run for this bytecode verification, after this bytecode verification, whatever is needed, that would be given only by this JVM. If 100 MB is required, only 100 MB memory would be given. And this bytecode will think that, this bytecode of this application will think that it is running on actual machine, but it is actually running on a virtual machine, not the actual my machine. That is why it's Java is more secure. It provides me security so that it cannot this bytecode cannot modify or change something in my machine, access my resources or some kind of thing. Right? This is how the security or in Java is achieved. So basically, this JVM provides a isolated and restricted environment to run these applications. And this process is basically known as, you have heard about this thing, sandbox. Modern web servers, web browsers run on sandboxing. to run the scripts or the applications they download from other servers, or in apps also, in our mobile also, run in a sandboxing environment. Sandboxing is just a isolated or restricted environment, a space given to run that particular app or that particular software or that particular application, right? Okay, that's it. How security is achieved. I hope you got this idea. Now, next is robust. Java is robust. You have heard this thing. But what does this mean? In simple English, it means like it's a strong, consistent, reliable language. And why robust? Because there are some more features. Because of this, Java is robust. And the features are first, strong typing. Strong typing means Java is a statically typed language. At compile time only, you have to give like data type of the variable you are using, like int a. So you have to write down this thing, the data type of that variable, particular variable, and then the name. Like I'm using int a. In int a is equal to suppose 10. In Python, you can simply write a equal to 10. You don't have to give the data type, right? But it is statically typed. You have to give this data type. So at compile time only, it checks for the errors, the typing errors. So that's why most of the error you can detect in development phase only, rather than going to the run phase, right? So during compilation only, you will get most of the errors. That is why it is more like, we can say, robust. So Java is statically typed, so it enforces a strict type checking at compile time, reducing runtime errors, right? Next thing is, in Java we have exception handling. So in more detail, if I tell you these things, see, this is type checking in Java. This is strong type checking. So compile time checking is only there. Java compiler catches many errors before runtime. Runtime checking is also there after compile time. Runtime checking is also there. Additional checks performed during runtime execution. So that's why this way. Strong typing means variables must be declared before use with specific data types. So this is kind of type checking. Now next was exception handling. So let me show you that slide also. What does that mean? Exception handling in Java. So this is exception handling in Java. It means you can handle the errors in Java in a more sophisticated way without causing the crashing of your system, crashing of your program. We can easily catch those errors that we think that, yeah, this will give error. Suppose we know if a number is divided by the 0, it will give some error, some kind of thing. Not error, but some kind of undefined behavior will show. Because number divided by 0, definitely it's infinity, and it will give some kind of thing, abnormal behavior it will show. So that is kind of an abnormal behavior. So that thing is exception. So those things we can catch during our program only. We can write down some special kind of code to handle exception, that is try, catch, finally block. In detail, I'll discuss what is exceptional handling, but in just brief, I'm going to tell you this thing. So Java has a strong exception handling, and because of this, the program can handle errors without crashing, providing meaningful feedback to the user. So if you think that this code can give this kind of error or exception, you just write down that code into try block. Every try block will have a catch block where the specific exception are code, and a feedback would be given to user. Some message would be printed to user. And then we have a finally block. Then code in finally block always executes, ensuring cleanup. In detail, I'll show you these things when we're discussing exception handling. So because of this feature, exception handling, we can manage the errors, the runtime errors, the errors that can come during runtime more, sophisticatedly, so that the program continue running without crashing, right? So this is kind of exception. If you're not getting in detail, don't worry. We'll see in a separate chapter what is exception handling. Then next was multi-threading. We were discussing what? We were discussing are this thing like memory management, robustness in Java. Because of memory management also, in Java we have automatic memory management. Now what does this mean? See, automatic memory management means in C or C++, you have to allot memory yourself, right? You have to proper write down the code to allot memory in C++ for objects. you have to allot memory, and after the object is of no is in case is of no use, then you have to deallocate that memory manually, right? You have to free up that space. But that thing Java does automatically because of the feature having garbage collection. See, like in your home, your mom is something like this. Your mom is like, you put your shoes here, your clothes here, and everything messed up, and your mom will just act as a garbage collector. He will put everything at their place. But if it's your duty, you have to put everything at your place, your bottle, your shoes, your laptop, your books, and everything, then it will be like hectic for you, right? Headache for you. But for you, your mom is automatic garbage collector. She do everything. She does everything, right? So you are having your, it's like more comfortable or more convenient for you. So that's why in Java we have automatic garbage collector. So we don't need to worry about the memory or memory related problems, memory leaks and all. Automatic, like when object would be created, automatically memory will be allocated. And after use, when unused object, when the object is in no use, automatically that would be detected that this object is of no use and removed from the memory. Memory would be freed. This is automatically done by Java. This is one of the best feature of Java. Next is we have portability. Portability is same. Just write your code. You develop your Java application, the software on any platform, compile to bytecode. The developers have to do this thing only. If I am the software developer, I have to do one thing. If I will create my application or software, just write down, just compile it, convert into bytecode. That's it. And just distribute that bytecode to my clients and all. And my clients are having their own JVM, and then would run that JVM, can run that bytecode on different machines having different operating system, irrespective of on which machine, on which operating system, on which architecture that bytecode has been generated or created, that program has been created. It will run anywhere. So that is why Java is portable, right? We can say type checking, we have discussed, automatic memory management, and next is what? Architectural neutrality is the same thing. We have discussed many times. Because of bytecode, Java compiles to an intermediate form, not the machine code, right? JVM interpretation, bytecode would be interpreted by the JVM on any platform. Then this is hardware independence, independent of the hardware you are using. No assumptions are made about the underlying hardware or the operating system. So Java is architectural neutral language. JVM is platform dependent. JVM is platform dependent. This you need to take care. Right. High performance is in Java. Why this is, see, Java is fast because of just in time compiler. The previous version like JDK 1.0, 1.1, these were not fast, these were slow, but then they added a feature that is JIT, just in time compiler, and because of that Java becomes fast. What is JIT basically? I'll tell you in detail, right? Because of this, it is fast because JIT compiler optimizes the code for specific hardware at runtime. I'll show you in detail what is this thing. And second, Java supports multi-threading. Multi-threading means, I'll show you this thing in detail. See, first let's see the fast execution of Java. Bytecode, Java class would be converted, that code would be converted into bytecode. Then this bytecode is basically highly optimized code, compiled, compact, and optimized code, right? So it's very easy. It's optimized for a quick interpretation. It can be easily be interpreted by JVM. Next, we have that JVM is having JIT, JIT compilation, JIT compiler. The code which is frequently used, that would be compiled to a native machine code. Let me just show you this thing with example. What is this hotspot technology and all? See, let's suppose we have not function will take, because in Java is object oriented programming language, so we call it method. So we call it like maybe method 1 having some line of code. Then we have method 2. Just understand it. You will now I'll discuss everything. What is JIT? How Java is fast. So two methods are there having. Suppose this method is having some 100 lines of code. Right. Now first, this is source code. This would be converted into bytecode, that is .class file. So suppose this, let me just take this example only. This will be converted Everything would be converted into bytecode, but we are taking the simple example within this method 2. Converted into bytecode, right? Now, having a dot class 5, this is the bytecode. Now, JVM will do what? This bytecode would be interpreted line by line by JVM, right? And then like gives you output, the JVM of that particular on that particular machine. This thing you got. Now the thing is, if this method is frequently used, means suppose this bytecode, this 50 lines of code, this is frequently used bytecode. Again and again, we are using this bytecode. So every time each line would be converted, interpreted, and executed. So Java has a just-in-time compiler feature, just-in-time compiler. So it will identify that this is a frequently used bytecode. So it will name it as hotspot, and there may be multiple hotspot as well, right? So now these hotspots are given to this JIT compiler, and this JIT compiler converts these hotspots into machine code, native code. And this machine code would be saved in memory, that is, it would be cached. These machine code would be cached. It's written in my notes, don't worry. So whenever, suppose this we have run suppose 100 times, so they realize that compiler realize that it is hotspot. Now it has created machine code for this particular method, this particular bytecode, and stored in cache. There are some particular JVM memory areas, right? Now next time, if suppose next 101 times when this bytecode hotspot would be executed, then rather than converting line by line, rather than interpreting line by line this bytecode and running directly, this machine code would be called from this cache memory, and it will give you output directly. Machine code would be called. So this conversion, this saves the time. Rather than converting line by line again, for all the 50 lines, the machine code is there in cache memory, just run this. That's it. So that's the main thing of JIT compiler. It optimizes the code, right? That's why we can say after adding JIT compiler, Java is fast. And maybe if suppose we have run this 200 times, so maybe that JIT optimize it more in some other way, and it will fast execution more, faster execution would be there. I hope you got this point, faster execution of Java. And we know bytecode is already compiled, compact, and optimized. And again, after that, we have a JIT compiler, which would again optimize that bytecode, convert into machine code. Okay, fine. Now, I hope you got this. So this is the main thing we have discussed, all these things here. Bytecode optimization, what is JIT compilation, and what is hotspot technology. I have told you how hotspots are identified and converted into machine code. Okay. Next is multi-threading in Java. So multi-threading is inbuilt in Java. It's like, see, multi-threading, multi-processing, multi-tasking, multi-programming, these are different concepts, but these concept comes in operating system, so we'll not go into deep. Two things I'll tell you. Multitasking, when you are working on your laptop, like making maybe you are typing something in Word document, and behind, like in background processes, you are listening music also, or something is being downloaded on your web browser also. 2 to 3 tasks are there. So this is kind of multitasking, right? These tasks are not, it's like parallel, but because of context switching between these tasks, at one time the processor would be doing like whatever you are typing there. Second time, for these 1 second or 2 second, it would be switched and doing the downloading. For 1 and 2 second, it would be switched and doing that whatever the third task, playing your song. But this context switching is so fast that you think that all these tasks are happening parallelly, but this is not actual parallel kind of thing. It comes in operating system, the scheduling algorithm, context switching and all. But this is multitasking. Multiple tasks or multiple processes are running. Multi-threading is different. Multi-threading is what? within the same process or the same program, multiple threads are running. Right, let me just show you this thing. See, Java has built-in support for multi-threading, allowing concurrent execution. Means at the same time they are executing for two or more parts of a program or a process for maximum CPU utilization. So multi-threading is something like this. We have single process or single program, we can say. Program is basically when it's running, then it's known as process. So there are multiple threads. Different parts of the same process are running with the help of multiple threads. Okay. So that's why you get the fast execution and maximum CPU utilization. If I am the resource, I am the CPU, I am one thing. But if I can write with my both hands, something like this, like this. So these are two threads. I am single one, but these are two threads. I hope you have watched that Three Idiot movie. You got the example, right? So obviously I can write like this. So rather than writing with one hand, if I write with both the hands, then that would be fast. So that's kind of multi-threading. Within the same process, there are multiple threads running the same process. That running the two parts or two or three parts of the same process. This is kind of multi-threading. So Java supports multi-threading. Okay. Now, how these threads are synchronized with each other? Because obviously these should be have in a sync. So there is a built-in mechanism for coordinating the threads execution and preventing conflicts. Okay, that is inbuilt. So we don't want to go in that much deep right now, but later on we'll discuss in deep. So this is what multi-threading in Java. Backward compatibility. This is also one of the best feature of Java. Backward compatibility means if you have developed many application or software in Java 8, suppose. So that application or that software can run, your old code can run on newer version of Java. On Java 23 also, Java 22 or Java 21. So that is backward compatibility. Java supports this thing. So that's why, like, developers also, can easily migrate to the newer version because they know that their existing application, their existing code will work fine on the newer version also. And the companies also rely on this. That's why on Java, because they know their already existed application will work fine on the newer versions. Some obviously newer versions, new features would be added definitely without breaking existing applications. But some features would be removed, deprecated, like applets. So outdated features are marked for removal but supported for several versions. But right now, I guess there is no support for applet in recent versions. So there are some deprecated features also that will not be supported in newer versions. Okay, so this is backward compatibility in Java. Exception handling we have discussed. Now Java additions. See, Java is not just a programming language. It's both a programming language as well as a platform also. See, as we know, we can develop applications in Java which runs on for many devices like desktop, for your web server, for your mobile, and many more for embedded system. And to develop these applications, there are dedicated platforms to develop these different kind of applications. Right. So let me just show you first briefly what is Java editions. Java SE, Java FX is also there, but mainly we are discussing these three only. Java SE is a standard edition. It is specifically for developing those standalone applications for your desktop or server also, like in a hospital management system. So that would be there in like almost in every PC in that all the hospital, I mean everywhere, and they used to enter some patient detail or record and all these things, right? So that is comes under Java Standard Edition. So Java Standard Edition, this platform is used to develop these kind of applications. This platform provide these functionality that we can develop these kind of applications, right? But the thing is, next is Java EE. Java, previously it was known as J2EE. Previously it was known as J2SE. Let me just show you this thing. Now, so it was known as previously J2SE and it was J2EE. But it's Java EE now. It is used to develop large scale enterprise applications, large scale softwares. Large scale software means at the same time means a large number of users are using that software, means like e-commerce website, Amazon. So throughout the globe, like many users are accessing that particular website at maybe same point. So to develop these kind of applications, we need Java EE Enterprise Edition for large scale and multi-tiered scalable applications. But now it is Jakarta EE after I guess 2019 because of that it has been captured by Eclipse Foundation. So they have renamed it and it is Jakarta EE. But you don't have to go in detail. But it is the foundation for Java EE is Java SE. Foundation is this, and upon this Java EE has been built. Some extra features like you have heard about servlets, JSPs, those are in Java EE. Right. So this is Java EE. And next is Java ME. Previously it was known as J2ME. This is micro edition. This is known as micro edition. And it's to develop the applications for small devices like mobile devices, embedded devices, having those devices are having some restricted resources. And this Java ME is a subset of Java SE. Right. So Java SE is main. Like it will give you the core functionalities of the Java. Right. And these are dependent on Java SE only. So you have a great knowledge of Java SE. That's why in this course we'll be following Java SE. You don't have to go in detail of Java EE and Java ME. So now what is Java SE? See, each of these platform are having their own specifications. Specifications means it's just a document. It describes how that platform, how that language works, basically. Right? Now the implementation, now after following or after reading or after following those specifications, some implementation would be done. Right? So same Java EE, so sorry, we are discussing Java SE. So Java SE is also having few specifications, one or two or three specifications. Let me just show you. These are the specifications Java SE is having. So let's say here we have JLS. First is JLS, this specifications. Java language specifications means this is a document where it defines that. I'll show you the document proper. Let me just brief this thing first. I'll show you on internet. Don't worry. It defines the syntax, the rules and semantics of the Java programming language. How the construct to be used, how program should be written, and these things. What are the rules and syntax of writing programs? So it defines those things. This specification, Java language specifications, and it is the most accurate because it's been written by the designers, the language designers itself, including James Gosling. So it is kind of the best book, but for beginner, it's tough. It's not readable. I mean, you cannot understand. Although it's the best one, if you want to read about Java, how to use what are the syntax, semantics, how to use all the construct and all, it is the best one, but it's tough. I'll show you the specification as well. Next, we have Java virtual machine specifications. So, Java virtual machine specifications. So, it describes basically how should the JVM works, and as well as the byte code, instruction set also. So, it describes the requirement for Java virtual machine implementation and this thing. Regarding Java JVM detail, there is a particular document that is known as JVMS. Okay. Next is having Java API specification. So Java API specification. API means like the core libraries. It is having the core libraries. It documents the core libraries and APIs available to Java developers. So Java developers can use these libraries into their code. So these three specification is having, like Java SE is having these three specifications, Java SE edition. Now, using these three specifications, there are so many vendors or the providers of those have been implemented these specifications, like Oracle, JDK. One is Oracle, OpenJDK. One is Amazon Corretto. Don't worry, it's there, everything in my notes. One is Red Hat, Red Hat's OpenJDK. Like there are more vendors also. Must have remember, like when I was showing the versions of Java, there I have told you this particular a version of Java gets support from Oracle as well, Red Hat as well, Amazon as well. So they are vendors, they're providers of those you can say JDKs, that Java. So this, they have implemented the specifications and they provide this implementation. This thing is known as JDK, Java Development Kit. What is JDK? I'll tell you. Don't worry. Fine. Now this is commercial also. This is paid also, but you can use the community version that is free also. We can use, but for companies they pay, and then companies use paid version. This is completely free. OpenJDK. For commercial use also you can use this thing, but for commercial use, if you want to use Oracle JDK, you have to pay for that. But we just don't want to use for commercial purpose, so we will use Oracle JDK. Oracle is because owner of Java, so we'll use this JDK. Okay. Now what is JDK? Let me tell you. Okay. Java Development Kit. Kit means, like, in my kit I have pen, pencil, or maybe sharpener, eraser. So a complete kit I have to do my task. So for developing Java programs, there is a complete kit having some tools that is known as Java Development Kit. I have told you, using those specifications, different providers implement those things, and that complete implementation, that is known as JDK, Java Development Kit. Okay. Now this is JDK. What JDK contains? In JDK, we are having some tools, development tools like Java compiler, debugger, right? We are having JVM, Java Virtual Machine. This is important one. The task, what the JVM do, that I have already tell you. Interpret that bytecode into machine code and run. Then Java API. Two things. Java API as well, the core libraries that Java developers can use, right? Now, both these things, JVM plus Java API, comes under JRE, Java Runtime Environment. I'll tell you what is JRE as well. And complete this JRE plus development tools, this complete comes under JDK, Java Development Kit. So it's like a software development environment, or software development kit also we can say, SDK. Used for developing Java applications, it provides the necessary tools and libraries to write, to compile, to debug, and to run Java code. This is JDK. So we are going to write programs as well, compile, debug, and also we need JDK. That's why we will install JDK. I hope you got this now. Now let's come to that thing, JRE and JVM. And JDK provider, I have told you, Oracle, OpenJDK, Amazon, Reddit. Many companies provide JDK, so you can download any JDK. And see, all these companies have their own implementation, but they comes from the same source code, that is Oracle OpenJDK. Actually, sorry, OpenJDK only. That project name is OpenJDK, and that is completely free. So anyone can access, anyone can download for commercial purpose also, that OpenJDK. That is open source, so anyone can contribute into that project as well. Okay, so Java is basically open source. Okay, now what is JRE? JRE is Java Runtime Environment. As the name suggests, the purpose is only to run the Java applications. If you don't want to write down any code, if you don't want to develop software, if you want to just run the softwares, Java software or Java application, you just download JRE, that's it. Java Runtime Environment, and you can separately download JRE, not right now, but Oracle used to provide a separate JRE to download, I think till Java 10. But after Java 11, it discontinued a separate JRE. JRE would be like that thing, integrate only JDK. Obviously, in JDK we have JRE. So to use JRE, you have to download JDK only. But before Java 11 till Java 10, I guess there is a separate JDK and separate JRE. So if you see, there are Java is running on billions of devices. I guess almost 3 billion devices. But not on every device Java is being developed or written code, and the code is to be written. Many users are there, they only run those applications that are written in Java. That's it. So they need only JRE. So why to download JDK? But we, like a developer, obviously have to include JDK, right? So a JRE contains, I have told you, JVM plus the API, these two things. So libraries, class libraries, JVM, some other runtimes tool also that a JRE contains. This is JRE. This is JRE. It is not having development tools. So you cannot, if you have only GRE, you cannot write down code, you cannot develop your Java application or Java program. You can just run this. You have the bytecode, just download the GRE, because in there is JVM and you can run this. That's it. Okay, fine. Now it's because you don't know, it's already there in your maybe your phone or your laptop, because it's integrated in that JDK only, right? These days. So we don't separately download JVM or JRE. It's already there, downloaded in our phone maybe, or in our laptop also sometimes. So that is JRE. Now, what is JVM? Java Virtual Machine. So you don't go to, if you don't want to go into that deep, it's okay. You just need to remember Java Virtual Machine. Basically, it is responsible for running Java programs by converting Java bytecode into machine code. That can be executed by computer processor. That's it. That is JVM. So first JVM, then we have JRE, then we have JDK. I hope you got this. This is the architecture. If you want to check out, you can check out this thing. So see, this is our program. Let me just show you this thing. First .java source code. Then after compilation, we get bytecode .class file. And we are running this with Java first. This is the command. So whenever we run this .class file, there is a JVM. This is JVM. Right. So this .class, there is a class loader. This would be loaded. There is a bytecode verifier in the JVM. It would verify that bytecode. Instructions to be executed, that would be given to, there is an execution engine in JVM that would be given to this engine. This engine is having JIT compiler as well as interpreter. I have told you the process or the work of JIT compiler as well as interpreter. Okay. Interpreter will interpret line by line, run this, and if there are some hotspots, then JIT compiler comes into picture to optimize the code to speed up the execution. In JVM also we have security manager. I have told you when we were discussing why Java is secure, the feature of what is security manager. Okay. In JVM only we have Java collector, garbage collector for automatic memory management. Fine. This thing we have discussed. This is JVM. And see, this is like runtime areas or JVM memory. When this is loaded, the class loader, the class file is loaded, bytecode would be verified. Then this would be obviously some stored in a memory, that is JVM memory would be given to this machine. Method heap, method area, JVM stack, PC and all. You don't need to go to that in that much deep. So the main thing is this. This is JVM. The main thing is this thing. So I hope you have got the idea, the architecture of JVM and what is the role of JVM. Mainly component of JVM are these three: class loader. You can see class loader, execution engine, garbage collector, and security manager. We have already discussed these components. Okay. I hope you got this now, the basic terms and basic ideas. Now we are going to, I'll show you first. I'll not download first. I'll show you first those specifications, JLS and all. So what you need to do is, you need to go to your Chrome. Here you just type Java SE specifications. Java SE specifications or specs. See, the first link is from Oracle. Okay. So Java SE specifications, just click on that and you will see those language specifications I have told you. See, the Java in Java latest is 23. JLS, Java language specifications, SE23 editions, HTML file and PDF file. There are some features. Java virtual machine specifications. These are preview features. So if you click on HTML, you will see this document was written by these members and one is James Gosling. That's why I've told you this language specification documents is written by the designer itself. So it's most accurate. See the content. If you want to check out, you can click and you can read the content, but it's definitely difficult. Suppose let's first organization of the specification. There are something here. So you can check out if you want to check out and if you want to read. Right. Now let me just show you this virtual machine specifications. Click on HTML and see. This was written by these members. And this is the table of content of JVM. History, machine, organization and all. Everything you will get here. If you want to read out, you can check out this thing. For Java 22 also, JLS, virtual machine specification. See, the specifications are there, right? Now, that I'll tell you that Java API specification. So these are not there, they are in separate sections. So let me just open one more. If you search Java 23 API, you can say I'm searching for Java 23. You can search for any version. So let's click on the first, that is from Oracle only, and there are the API specification. See, for version 23. So you can check out this also. Module description and all. These are all the APIs. You will be using some APIs as well, like java.sql, and there are many APIs. So we'll be using these things also, many classes, libraries, and all. So this is how you can check if you want to. And see, there is one more thing, JSR. Java, it's known as Java Specification Request. So it's a document or specification that contains whatever the new features get added in that version. And it comes under different phases. It goes under different phases. First, like for group formation, then public review, then final approve ballot, public review, then final release. So there are different phases. And like this process of approving or creating this Java specification request, JSR, that is known as JCP, Java Community Press. That's it. Okay. I just want to get you familiar with these terms. That's it. Nothing else. Okay. Now let's download our JDK 21. Okay. So to download JDK 21, what we are using, just search like Java 21 download. The first, click on first link, that is from Oracle, oracle.com. Java downloads. Here you will get like Java 23, 21, 17 are available now. Java 21 is the latest LTS support release of Java SE platform, right? Whatever you want to include, you can go for that. It's Java 23. I want to include Java 21. See, Java 21 will receive updates under this until September 26. Okay, that's free, but paid version, like on the for commercial use, if you buy paid one, that will get support for almost 8 years, more than 8 years. So, for which you want to download Linux, macOS, or Windows? I have Windows, so I'll download for Windows. If you have Linux, you can download for that. If you have macOS, you can download for that. So I have Windows. So let's click on Windows and see. There are x64 installer and x64 MSI installer, two installers. So we will install this x64 installer. And it is for 64-bit machine. My machine is 64-bit. You can check out what your machine is, 32-bit or 64, but mostly there are 64 nowadays. Because on 32-bit machine, it will not run the latest version. The recent version was, I think, is Java 8 that will run on 32-bit machine. After that, you need 64-bit machine, right? Okay, now let's download. Click on this x64 installer and it will take some time to download. See, till then, let me just show you one more thing. Java 10 download, if you click on this, I mean, if you search Java 10 download. So, see, there is a separate JRE to download, right? JDK is separate and JRE is separate, as you can see, right? So, I have told you Oracle was providing a separate JRE to download before, like till Java 10 version, but it's not in Java 11. If you search, if you go for Java 11 download, then there is only JDK. See, there is no JRE. There is no separate JRE they provide. So to use, although they provide a JLink tool that you can use to create your custom JRE. But if you want to use JRE, you have to download JDK only. Okay, fine. Now our download is almost done. See, in download, we have this JDK 21, this bin. So just double click on this and run this. Yeah, install this. Click on yes, and now see, it will take some time. So just have to click on next and see, this will install Java SE Development Kit 21.0.4 64-bit, which requires this much memory on your hard drive. And this is where it would be installed. C program file Java folder, then JDK21 folder. You can change it if you want, but this is recommended. So you just keep it as it is, don't change. Click on next and it will start downloading the JDK. Why we are downloading JDK? I've told you what is JDK, Java Development Kit. So obviously it will provide you the tools to develop Java programs, to run, to debug Java applications. Okay, fine. Now just close. It's successfully installed. Now if you want to check, then first program we will write in Notepad. So you can just search here CMD. And there, if I write here Java dash, which version is there of Java in my laptop? So I have 21.0.4. If you search Java C, this version, that is will also give you same 21.0.4. So this means that yeah, we have Java, this JDK installed, we have Java installed. Now you can run. Now first we will not use any IDE, we will use Notepad to run our Java programs. So let's in a Notepad I'll run my Java program. So let's create a file here. Sorry, not to run. We'll use your Notepad to create our Java programs. We will run some command Java C and all and command prompt to run that thing. So see, I have created a folder. See, already my path is C users and PRAD. This is the username. So I'm just creating a folder here only within this path only. Otherwise, you have to change the path. That thing will show in will see in a different video. But for now, I'm creating here C users PRADE. Within this, I have a folder Java practice, and there I will save my Notepad file in this folder only. So I'll write my Java program here. So there is first public class, and the name of this class I'm taking like hello Jenny, and we have a main within this. Don't worry about whatever I'm writing the syntax and all. We will discuss every single word of this thing in detail because we have to write down a lot of program string args, and within this I'm just writing system dot out dot println and hello. Welcome to Jenny's lectures. And just close this and just close these two. So we can just do something like this. Just a little bit formation of this. So just to print in Java, we have first you will make a class. Then for main function, you have to write like public static. What is the meaning of public static? Why this class and all? String args and all. We will discuss in detail one by one the anatomy of this class, everything in next video. But it just make you understand like this is how. Just to make you understand, this is how you can print your anything on Java or your first Java program. To print, we use system.out.println, or just print also we can use. Println means for next line. I'll show you everything. Whatever you want to print, just write down here hello world to Jenny's lectures. This would be printed. So let's save this file. And I will save this file where I have created my folder in C, in users, PRADE, and here we have that Java practice. Java practice. Let's save this. File name would be same as the class name. For now, just you need to understand this thing. Okay, the file was already there, so I have removed that file from that folder named hello Jenny, that Java file, and now it should be hello Jenny dot Java, right? Let's save this. The extension is dot Java. Save this, and let's in our command in our terminal. So the path is C users PRAD, but we want to enter into that. We want to change the path. So if you want to change the path, then CD. And what is the path of that file where I have my Java file? In Java practice, I have this hello world. right? Sorry, hello Jenny. Hello Jenny. So this is the path. So you have to copy this path and set this here. Now see user prade username and Java practice. Now I'm within this folder. So now I can this using the command I can access my file. So to compile first Java C file name hello Jenny dot the extension Java the file name. Okay, it's showing package system does not exist. Oh, sorry. It's capital S. It's not small s. Java is it's case sensitive. You have to take care. Wherever you write, I write small, you have to write small, but the system S is capital. So you have to take care this thing. Let's save this and now run this again. So let's open this terminal again and you have to change the directory. Again, change this path cd. This is the command to change. And we are now in Java practice. Now Java C hello Jenny dot Java. So see no error. It's been compiled successfully. Now to run we use just Java and hello Jenny. That's it. See, hello, welcome to Jenny's lectures. So, congratulations, you have written your first program and you got the output. Now, if you think that you are not getting anything, public class, this is see the name of class. This is what a keyword class. Public, why anyone can access this class outside of this, like JVM can access this. Void main is also public. Static means we will see in detail in later videos, but for now, static means static method. See, main is a method, so static method means the methods who are static, those method can be called without creating the object of that class. See, main is within this class, hello Jenny, but JVM no don't need to create object of hello Jenny to call this main method. No, because main is entry point. So without creating the object of this class, I can call the this method main. So that is why this is static. Static means that. Okay. Don't worry if you're not getting object, class, method, and all. We'll see in later videos. But if you have some idea of Java, then you get it. And string args are like it is expecting an array of string. The name is args. System.out.println is to use when you want to print whatever is there, it would be printed. So I hope you got this. And see if you have written your program on desktop, then also while running the program, you have to change here the path. The path should be where your hello Jenny or the whatever the file name is. So this path should be exactly same. My hello Jenny file is in C drive, users, prade username and Java practice. So you have to set this path. Otherwise it will give you error. You need to take care of this thing, right? It's not like that you have to you have to create your file in this only or C drive only. You can change the drive also, D drive or desktop. So, but you have to set the path here using some command. Like here I have used cd command to change the directory. Okay, fine. And if you want to check out what is there in that JDK folder, then where is that JDK folder? In Windows C, and I have program files because I have downloaded that for 64-bit. If it's for 32-bit, then it would be in program file x86. Program files, and here I have this Java, this folder. C, Java, JDK 21. Within this, in bin folder, we are having those executables, some files like I'll show you. See, Java, Java C, the compiler. We have jar also in this. We have Java doc also. We have JLink also, JShell also. I will show you all these things one by one in detail in later videos. But for now, that's it. Coding. Okay. So I hope you have downloaded JDK 21 for your system. Maybe it's Mac or Linux or Windows, and you have run your first program. Now there are many things I need to tell. So these are nothing but how to install and all. This is how to write down your first Java program. It's everything is there, and compiling and running your Java program, and that's it. So you have done this thing. But don't worry, there are many things I will tell about this program. I'll tell you about path variables. I'll show you everything within that JDK I have shown you here. And many files, like many command Java C and all, right? And we will see everything every single step, like every single word in that class file, what does in that Java file, what does that mean in detail from the next video. But for now, that's it. Like, this is how you can print anything on the screen using in Java programming language. Okay, if you're not getting the program, it's okay. Don't need to panic because we need to do many things. It's just starting. Okay. Now in Java 21 also, I have told you there's a biggest update. Without writing the public class, class name, and the public static void main, you just have to write void main, string args, and then just you can just print your whatever you want to print. But for that, you have to enable something. So from the next video, in the next video, I'll show you all these things, right? How to enable that feature without writing class name or public static, without just write down void main and system.out.println, and you will get the output. So from the next video, we'll be discussing in deep. Actually, we are going to do some practical and all, right? So that's it for this video. Now I'll see you in the next video. Till then, bye bye. Take care.